intensity?
It's Dallas week, Craig.
I thought there were rules. Did we play this song when they won?
Oh, yeah. I think we've lost 7 straight, so
Yeah.
we're winning off the field.
No, we're not going back to that again. That is not how we are starting 2024. Oh, my God. It's really 2024. Wasn't that a year in the Jetsons? Anyway, God, I'm old. Anyway, what's up? Welcome to the show on a Misery Tuesday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. New year, same shenanigans, same host. That's me. Same producer. That's him. Same way we start the show on a Misery Tuesday. In this particular case, the day that we have a show after the Commanders game, and that is with 10 observations from it, including one season-long big one to get us started.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3, First up, 10 observations.
Just took his guy and just boom, put him right on the ground.
It's first and 10.
All right, number one.
Number 1.
I'm going to make a declarative statement that I have been resisting making all year, whether it was going to be this or something that was contrary to this. It is a definitive statement about Sam Howell's future. And then I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes explaining why I'm very comfortable making it at this point. I think that we have enough data to say that Sam Howell is not an option A for this team in 2024. So let's rewind that. He's not an immediate option A in 2024, a.k.a. you cannot go into this offseason going, Sam Howell is our starter, we're set at quarterback. And there was a point this season that I thought we were very much on that path, and I was very excited about it, as were so many of you. However, I think what we've got now, or not I think, what we have now is a season's worth of data, essentially. We have 16 games this season. We also happen to have one from last season. So we have 17 starts from Sam Howell. And what I would tell you is that, in my opinion, he is a very high-end backup. And that's not bad for a guy who went in the 5th round. And that's a phrase that I might utter a couple more times over the next 10 minutes or so. But ultimately, he fits the definition of that. His play fluctuates dramatically with the opponent. When he has faced bad defenses, he has lit them up. He can throw for 330. He can throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns. He can make big-time throws. He can do a lot of excellent stuff. Sam Howell is very talented, and he has shown a lot this year. The slot fade that he throws to Terry McLaurin on Sunday is great, but it's a throw that a lot of NFL quarterbacks make. And the more the season has gone, the less he has made the kinds of throws that, hey, that's really special. But we've seen it. We know it's in there. The problem is, earlier in the season, it was like, hey, if he can clean up X, Y, and Z and keep doing this great stuff, he's going to be the guy. And he has not cleaned up the other stuff. I would say the good news based off of Sunday, though, is that he's not cooked. Like, there was a real fear that those 3 games that he had prior to Miami, Dallas, etc., those games were, like, tragically bad. That if that's who he all of a sudden was, that, you can't even trust him to be your backup. Like, if he ever plays again, he's not there. Like, did they ruin him David Carr style, Patrick Ramsey style? And the answer is no. Sam looked like Sam again on Sunday. He had a resilience to him. He had a confidence. There was his version of timing, I would call it. The problem is that player is not one that is a high-end starter in the NFL. And so if you go into next season with him as your plan at starting quarterback, you're looking at a middle-of-the-road season if things go well, or possibly another 6-win type of year. Probably not a 4-win year. You'd have to have a lot of stuff go wrong to have a 4-win year. See what has happened this year. Really bad coaching, really bad lot of stuff. Some bad luck along the way. All, league's worst defense, all that. And, just not having the league's 20th best defense this year, and you're a 6-win team instead of a 4-win team. But all in all, I am ready to say definitively Sam Howell should not be option A going into next season. So that leads to the why of that, which I will count as number 2 in this first and 10.
Number 2.
The evaluation process is this. Earlier in the season, you're looking for a trajectory. And a lot of that is going to be defined by big-time throws and the consistency with which he makes them, or any player makes big plays, right? You see super high-end stuff, and you go, whoa, okay. Can't coach that. That's spectacular. This guy could be something. And then you look, how often does that stuff happen? And early in the season, there was some consistency to some of those big-time plays. He led the league in big-time throws by PFF's metric until I think it was week 12. And then you go, okay, what about the rest of the stuff? How does he need to round out his game? And the stuff that he needed to round out, he needed to bring the sack pressure or the pressure to sack ratio down. He needed to get better at moving in the pocket. He needed to get better at reading the middle of the field. His footwork needed to get way cleaned up. And you'd see spurts of it, but you kind of assume that stuff is going to get better with time. And unfortunately, the reality is it didn't. And I think that's why earlier in the year, you see a lot of us going, Sam's probably going to be the guy. If I had to bet now, I would probably, I know in this segment, there was a point that I was like, if I had to bet right now, I would bet on him being the guy for next year and moving forward. And he just didn't improve from there. And that's why I always reserved the right to change my mind. And it wasn't even changing my mind. I always said this is an ongoing evaluation. We don't know what we don't know. We have to keep watching. We have to keep evaluating. This is not done yet. You don't make a decision before you have to. And a lot of people didn't want to hear it. A lot of people wanted an answer now. They wanted to crown Sam, or if they didn't think Sam was any good, say he's a bust. And the truth is we just didn't know. And so patience is a virtue. Patience is something that a lot of folks don't have. We live in a very microwave society, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to go on a big, long old man diatribe about that. Just the reality is, you don't need to self-impose a deadline. And in week 8 and week 7, when Sam was playing better, you didn't need to say he's the guy right now because you didn't know how the next 9 games or whatever were going to go. And now we do. And what we see is a backup caliber player. Now, that leads to, I think, the final point I'd like to make on Sam to kind of close out this opening segment, number 3.
Number 3.
Long term, I would put Sam in what I think is a pretty damn good bucket for him. So I know it's not what we wanted. What we wanted was the Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott bucket of late Russell Wilson, late round picks that have turned into really good, or in Wilson's case, I know obviously things have soured at the end, but like Russell Wilson's going to go to the Hall of Fame. Now, if you could have been in that bucket, you're in great shape. But even then, if you're in the Cousins Prescott bucket, guys that have won double-digit games, that have taken their teams to the playoffs, sure, they've left some desire to be in the playoffs, but like just getting there would be nice, and feeling like you have a legit shot every single year, in part because of who your quarterback is, not in spite of it, as a late-round pick, that would be an incredible bucket to be in. I don't think Sam's in that bucket. I think Sam's in this bucket. It's the bucket that includes Geno Smith, that includes Baker Mayfield, that includes a guy like Jameis Winston. And another name I'm going to throw in there is like a wild card type of name is Nick Foles. Now, it's worth pointing out, Smith, Foles, second rounders, if I'm remembering correctly on Foles, Mayfield, Winston, not just first rounders. Those guys were 1-1 overall. If it was a 5th round pick, you get into that bucket. That ain't a bad place to be. But what those guys are guys who are in the right system with the right coaches and the right supporting cast, along with the right defense on the other side, could win you 11 games if you have a good year. Like everyone stays healthy and everything is right around them. That's not a bad place to be. And maybe they could even win you a playoff game. I mean, the reason I picked Foles in there is because, shoot, if he gets hot at the right time, a.k.a. January or February, Nick Foles won a bleeping Super Bowl. But I think part of the reason Nick Foles wins a Super Bowl is because he is the backup. They don't win that year if Nick Foles is playing the whole year and the whole league has tape on him in that offense and all that kind of stuff. No, like Nick Foles benefited from only having to do it for 4 games. Jameis Winston, plays over the course of a season, 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. Like that's kind of what Sam's doing this year. Not quite that extreme. And no one's ever done it as extreme as Jameis. He's the only 30-30 guy ever most of the time because if you throw that many picks, you never get a chance to throw 30 touchdowns. But Sam is kind of that super high pick, super high touchdown guy. He's accounted for 25, I think, total touchdowns, 20 through the air, 5 on the ground. And realistically, I think that's who he's going to be. And I think what's happening right now is if you want to look at a long-term prognosis for Sam, and just through the lens of him, not through the lens of Washington, which we'll obviously get to, and we'll take some calls later this hour on what Washington should do, not next year, but next week. Do you let him start this final game? Do you start Jacoby Brissett? We can go through it here at 4:30. But realistically, what Mayfield's done and what Geno, I think, is really done more extreme because Baker kind of got chances along the way. Geno just had to sit. Geno had some success early, but mostly some struggles early, obviously amplified by being a New York Jet and everything that goes with that. You then have years of sitting behind Russ, learning, seeing how it's done at a high level, being patient, being a good teammate, growing up in his case. I think there's a lot of maturation that happened for Geno specifically. I don't know that Sam has to do a lot of that. He seems like a very mature kid, but everyone has their things they need to learn, personal or professional. And then Geno comes out and he balls out here later in his career. Baker's having a resurgence in Tampa. Could that be Sam in 4 years when he'd only be 27? Because that's the other thing. Sam is young. He's only 23. He's younger than some of the guys who are going to be drafted this year. And he'll be going into year 3. That's important to remember. He's got a lot of room to grow. But as an organization, you have to decide, is that worth it for you? And also, you have the business side of he is going into year 3 of a 4-year rookie contract. So if he all of a sudden does pan out on some level, how much do you want to pay him? And do you get stuck in a Daniel Jones situation where you're not really that sure, then you pay him a bunch of money, and then obviously it's gone terrible for New York because Jones got hurt, but he wasn't any good before he got hurt this year. So all in all, Sam's not in a terrible place for the long term in his career. I think he can play. I think he's proven that. I don't think he's proven that he can play consistently at a high level. And that is enough for you as an organization to continue searching for something else at quarterback. However, it also means next year, if the draft falls in a bad way or you don't like any of these quarterbacks, and now everyone, of course, wants their team to take Michael Penix because they've watched one college football game all year, but you don't like any of these quarterbacks, that if you use Howell as a bridge guy, the bridge is all right. But you are ultimately looking to find your CJ Stroud, your Patrick Mahomes, your number one true guy. And I would be very surprised at this point if Sam Howell ever got to that based off of now a full season's worth of data to make that evaluation on. When we get back, we will talk about the rest of the game against the Niners, the other 7 takeaways. It's 1st and 10 getting us started on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app. We start each show the day after a Commanders game, or in this case, 2 days after Happy New Year, with First and 10. We spent the first 3 of our 10 observations talking about Sam Howell, so let's get to 4 through 10 quickly. And then we'll take some of your calls coming up at 4:30. Ron Rivera declined to name a starting quarterback today for Week 18 against the Cowboys. Who do you think should start? We'll talk through it and take your opinions at 301-230-0980 coming up in about 10 minutes. But, Anthony, let's hit him with
number 4.
So do people believe me when I tell you the run game is good now? It was funny watching Twitter on Sunday and being like, oh, hey, they run the ball. This is cool. Until that final carry that Ron inexplicably gave Brian Robinson for 2 yards at the end of the game. Let's use all our timeouts in a game that we're down double digits and then come out and run the ball with the first play. What are we doing? A lack of organizational cohesiveness, a defining aspect of the Ron Rivera era. Anyway, point is, until that, the running backs were averaging over 5 yards a carry. Still, they averaged in the 4.8, 4.9 range for the game. They just have good backs, like straight up. One, this offensive line is built to run versus pass protect, which is hilarious because they pass the ball more than anyone else in the league. And 2, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson are very good football players. And again, I will never, ever understand why they did not give them the ball more this year in the easiest way possible, which is handing it to them. Number 5 is the other side of that on the defense. Man, the Commanders' run defense was bad. The Commanders did not have a single defensive player grade above 65. They had one defensive player grade above 65 on PFF. One. That was it. One. I think it was Quan. And he was like 65.1. Nobody above a 66. Brutal. And the biggest reason why is because when it came to running the ball, the Niners got whatever they wanted. McCaffrey, all their other backs down the list, like Debo, they all were able to get big chunks with consistency, and it just doesn't make sense on a defense that has John Allen and Daron Payne in the middle. Their pass defense has gotten a lot better since Ron has taken over, but they cannot stop the run, and I don't know whether it's a run fit issue, guys just not playing well issue. I don't know, and apparently neither do they. The Niners are the best running team in the league, like bar none. They just scheme it up. They execute it better than everyone else. But still, yikes.
Number 6.
Emmanuel Forbes looks like a rookie in around his 5th, 6th, 7th game. And I just will never understand, speaking of things I'll never understand, why he didn't get more playing time this season. Because you look at some of the things that happened to him on Sunday, from tracking Ayuk on the scramble drill touchdown, where Purdy makes a heck of a play, to the ball that he drops right over Forbes' outstretched arm. There's another play where he gets his hand on one and it kind of goes through his hand and Ayuk catches it anyway. But there's just a bunch of plays on Sunday that if you thought that if Forbes had more experience, I should say, you'd think that his timing and kind of his technique would be a little bit better, a little bit cleaner because he'd be used to the speed. And maybe he makes a play or two or doesn't lose Ayuk in the end zone. And experience matters. And, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the first round pick didn't get the chance to get experience. Meanwhile,
number 7.
Quan Martin may be their best defensive player the last couple of weeks. And they let him play through mistakes, and they let him grow into his role this season. And there were times where it was really, really bad, but they just kept putting him out there and coaching him up. And Quan has developed into a really, really solid football player that I think has the potential to keep growing into not just a solid young player, but a good NFL player, which is what you want from a second-round pick, something the Commanders haven't gotten out of a second-round pick in a long time, maybe since Preston Smith, who I was reminded is still good this weekend as I got the chance to watch the Packers and Vikings on Sunday night. You're like, oh, yeah, he used to be here. They let him go. And now he's still sacking quarterbacks. Cool. If only this team needed an edge rusher. Anyway, the point is that Quan got to play through stuff, and the experience has helped him grow. Meanwhile, Forbes did not get that chance, and he looks like a guy who could use some experience. Again, don't get it. Don't get it at all.
Number 8.
Which brings me to something I've been thinking about, something I've been stirring on, something I'll flush out more in preparation of the big changes that we all know are coming next week. We're just trying to define, if you word cloud, if you will, the Ron Rivera era here in DC. And one word that keeps coming to mind for me is favoritism. And the reason I go favoritism is it just feels like there are some guys who get good quality, what you'd want treatment, and other guys who get the raw end of the stick. And it doesn't seem to have a rhyme or reason as to who gets screwed and who gets opportunity. And sometimes the guys who get opportunity probably should get less opportunity. Like, who is he loyal to and who is he not? From coaches to players to whatever. Like, there's no consistency to it. And I think that's something you feel. And so, we'll talk about the culture change and whether or not it was real and are they better, are they worse, and try to make sense of all of that more so next week when it's over. Let's see what happens in this final week of the season. And not that much is going to change. It's just, we got more pressing stuff to talk about while there's still a game to go. But I think for me, when I think of some of the defining elements and defining words, defining characteristics of the Ron Rivera era, one is favoritism, and I don't get why Quan Martin is one of the favorites and why Emmanuel Forbes is not. They should both be treated very highly. They're top picks. Again, maybe, I will say this, maybe Ron at times has actually protected players by not outing bad behavior, and not necessarily like bad behavior, like they're out doing whatever, like not being focused, not being locked in meetings, and he doesn't want to out stuff that's happening inside the building. And if that's the case, okay, like I can respect that. But it's certainly from the outside, based off what we know, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I will give the possibility of that happening, or that being a thing. I'll leave that open.
Number 9.
Sam Cosmi's a freaking baller. Sam Cosmi, we talk about this offensive line a lot. A lot of people think it's terrible. I would say it's painfully mediocre. They have done some things very well. They've done other things terribly. Sometimes it's situational, yada, yada. Through it all, especially since middle of the season, Sam Cosmi's been incredible. He was the highest rated player on PFF again on Sunday, and PFF has him as one of the highest rated players in the league, if not the highest rated offensive lineman, I think I read, or maybe even highest rated player since week 13. He has been awesome. He murders people in the run game. He's allowed 0 sacks since week 13. And for an offense that struggles with a lot of stuff, he has just been a rock. And that's great because, we talk about second round picks. That's the one that's working out. Not at the position they thought. But there's that. There's that success story, I guess, which leads me to the final thing.
Number 10.
Andrew Wiley, contract-wise, makes sense to bring back. I don't know that he makes sense at right tackle. So if you can bring in a free agent right tackle that you feel really good about and address left tackle in the draft, that second pick or third pick or whatever it winds up being, or second round, whatever it winds up being, but you can address left tackle in the draft, or even if Leno is back, you could have a good offensive line next year if Ricky Stromberg works out and Andrew Wiley shifts into guard and plays guard at the level that I think most people think he's capable of and that he's played out at the past. If your offensive line is free agent right tackle who's good, Cosmi, you're stud on the right side. Stromberg would as your third round pick in his second year at center, he can succeed. And then your left guard would be Wiley, and then left tackle either Leno or hopefully an upgrade. And again, Leno's a middle of the pack tackle. So if you can upgrade, that means you're getting a top half good left tackle. That offensive line's pretty darn good, and you should be able to have a much different offense and success rate on offense thanks to the line next season. Just a thought. So that is first and 10 takeaways, 10 thoughts after watching the game on Sunday. I guess technically we'll do one more. I don't know how much purpose it'll have, but we will do one more next week. And then during the playoffs, we also do playoff version first and 10. So we got first and 10 for you on Mondays, or in this case, Tuesday, all the way through the Super Bowl. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we will take your calls, 301-230-0980. That's 301-230-0980. The Ace Law listener line talking about whether or not Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett should start next week. I guess whether Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett should be the starter next week. Your calls, our takes as well, next here on the Team 980 and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Taking your phone calls on the Ace Law listener line, 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. I guess it's kind of a vibe check Tuesday, but it's really a who do you want your starting quarterback to be Tuesday. Jacoby Brissett obviously was going to be the starter last week until his hamstring said, not so fast, my friend, Lee Corso style. And we see Sam Howell come back and bounce back to play better than he had been, but still not very good. For whatever it's worth, PFF graded him out as a 35. So that is one of his worst grades of the season. It's not good what Sam Howell did on Sunday, even if there was some good dispersed within it. And so to me, like, Sam played at a level that leaves you with the question of who do you play on Sunday? Because I do think that there are arguments to be made both ways, Brissett or Howell. So let's take some calls, 301-230-0980. And let's start with Henry. Henry, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Happy New Year's, Hoffman. How you doing, everybody?
I'm good. Happy New Year to you as well, Henry.
Hey, my thing is this. What goes around, come around. When Howell came in, he was the third-string quarterback or whatever to say at that time. I think Jake Fromm should be the starting quarterback.
Why?
He's strong, he's tall, he's young.
No, he's not.
Why not? Howell had his chance when he came in.
It's not about giving guys chances. This is the NFL.
Yeah, he's in the NFL, isn't he?
Kinda.
He's a third-string quarterback, isn't he?
He's been on the practice
Why not
squad
give him
all
a
year.
chance?
Because he's not that good.
Why not? How you know that? We ain't seen him play.
Yeah, we have. We've seen him in the preseason. We've seen him in training camp. Like, no.
That was look how long ago that was.
Okay, let's play your game. Henry, hold on. Let's play your game. I want you to tell me all the starting quarterbacks in NFL history that have been awesome after they were a third-string quarterback who, like, was on the practice squad most of their career.
For the Commanders?
For anybody. Third string to awesome starter. You see why your idea is stupid?
Top of my head right now.
Yeah, because it doesn't
It's
exist.
not stupid. Get a guy a chance. The end of the season, we've seen all.
Hold on, Henry. Go back to your answer. How many guys have done it in the history of the entire league?
2.
Who?
2.
Who have, no, this isn't a trivia question. This is the part where you tell me who the guys are that have gone from third string practice squad quarterback to being good starters that are worth playing.
I'm gonna throw one out there.
Brady was a third stringer for like one season, and he was a rookie, and then he got the chance to play, and yeah, he was awesome. But like, this isn't like. Also, Tom Brady's pedigree was way better than Jake Fromm's. Fromm's an undrafted guy. At least Brady was drafted.
Thing is this, it's the end of the season. We ain't got nothing else to play for. Why not?
Because
they're going to change everything up. We don't really know
Henry, thanks for your call.
Stuff.
I'm going to explain to you why not, but I'm not going to do it while you're yelling at me. And Henry wasn't yelling at me. That's how those things tend to go, and this is going to be better radio, I promise. I'm not trying to be rude. Here's the deal. Here's the answer to Henry's question. Because you do have things to play for. You are either evaluating Sam or you're evaluating everybody else. This isn't about being nice to people. If anybody deserves to be nice, have someone be nice to them, it's Jacoby. Jacoby was brought here under the impression that he was going to get a fair chance to compete, and he really didn't. Now, I think the competition was close enough in the preseason. We don't need to do revisionist history that Sam outright won the job based off of his potential compared to what Jacoby's was as a guy who's in his 30s. But Jacoby was a good soldier. Jacoby's been the best asset Sam arguably has in the building. He's been incredible as a teammate. And if you want to give someone an opportunity, you do that for Jacoby. And the other upside of doing that for Jacoby is you get to evaluate other players. If you get Jake Fromm out there, it's going to be like he's just going to get sacked a bunch. He's going to throw bad balls. Jake Fromm is better at quarterback than, arguably I will be at anything in my life compared to the entire population of the earth. I don't know. I am an afternoon drive in Washington, D.C. It's not a bad gig we're going here. I'm all right at this. But like Jake Fromm is a borderline NFL quarterback. He's one of the top 60 quarterbacks on the planet, which is awesome. Like, good for Jake Fromm. He's going to get paid very well for it. And he's probably a great guy to have in meeting rooms. And who knows? Maybe in one game he could do some stuff. But now's not the time to experiment for Jake Fromm. For what? He's not your starter next year. He's not anything for you next year unless he's right back where he is as your third string backup behind Sam Howell and whoever you draft. So, no, that's not a good idea. Long story short. Let's go to Cliff. Cliff, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Happy New Year, Craig.
Happy New Year, Cliff.
The quarterback I would go with who made this ship sink all year long is the captain himself, Sam Howell, because I don't want to lose that possible number 2 pick, and whoever we draft, Howell could be the backup since Brissett's more likely out of here doing free agency, and I'll sit back and listen.
All right, Cliff, thanks for the call. I don't disagree with that philosophy. Now, look, does Ron care about the draft pick? No. And do I think Jacoby is going to beat Dallas? Probably not. Does Jacoby have a better chance to beat Dallas? Probably. If we're being totally honest. The best chance to win the game is with Jacoby Brissett, likely on Sunday. And I do think there is something to just saying, like, hey, let's give Howell one more game of experience. As an organization, we're probably going in a different direction. But we do know that he's here for the next couple of years, likely. Or maybe if he puts something out there and plays well, will someone trade for him this offseason? Again, unlikely, but you never know. Crazier things have happened. So I think at the end of the day, like, if you want to say, hey, Sam's done the work all year. Sam was a good soldier last week, handled the benching really well, came back, did a professional job on Sunday. You were in the game. You actually played a pretty good first half, or a pretty solid first half. I don't know if good is too strong, but a solid first half. Like, I'm fine with starting Sam. Just, again, what's the point of starting Jacoby? And on some level, if I'm Jacoby, I'm like, you know what? I got 5 real drives and 5 touchdowns, and I'm about to be a free agent. I'm good. Let the kid play. I pulled a Taylor Heineke last year. Me and my hamstring are not going to go into this offseason not healthy. People know what I am. That's good. But I also do think, like, if I'm Jacoby, I want to play because you don't get that many chances to play professional football. And I think there is something to starting Brissett because of that. Let's go to Larry, who I think has that point of view. Larry, I see that you would like to start Jacoby. Why is that?
Well, I think he gives – hello?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think he gives them a better chance of winning, and I also think it's a good opportunity for Howell to sit back and observe Brissett another game and to find out perhaps weaknesses in this game. I believe Howell benefited from that from the last time he was benched. But I wanted to go back to a point that you raised earlier about the third string coming off the bench and starting and leading a team and winning. And the name that comes to mind is a former Hall of Famer, and that's Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner played in what is arguably the USFL, then was stocking groceries one year and went from being a third-string quarterback to starting quarterback. So it can happen.
It can.
It's an anomaly for certain.
For sure.
But it can happen.
No, and that's a great point. And that wasn't, the point was, like, if you want to think of one, it's not impossible, but it's very rare. Brady kind of fits that mold as well. But the thing is, like, those guys are extreme anomalies, and there's kind of weird mitigating circumstances around them. And the point I would just simply counterpoint with is, like, in general, NFL scouts are really good at what they do. NFL coaches are really good at what they do. And some guys are just gamers. Like, some guys get out there and it works. And for Kurt Warner and
with that. I would beg to differ with that last point about people being really good at scouting personnel. Every year in the draft, there are people that just fall through the draft that are not necessarily.
Sure, but they're better than anyone else on the planet who could try to do it.
Well, they do it 8 hours a day.
Yes,
7
that's
days
the point.
So 5 days a week, but
way more than that.
They're not infallible.
No,
and that's my point.
They're
my
not.
point is that it's like baseball. Baseball is a perfect example of that. It's a different sport, of course, maybe a different tool set, but personnel evaluations.
Okay,
and
I'm going to cut off this call here because I'm
time.
not wasting our audience's time on Jake Fromm calls. If Jake Fromm goes on to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, I want the documentary makers to pull this clip. It is me. My name is Craig Hoffman, and I'm a gigantic boob who knows nothing about football. I think that clip is probably going to be safe for eternity. We're not wasting time with this. NFL scouts, in general, are very good at this. It is extremely difficult. We're not going to get sidetracked because one time 2 decades ago, Kurt Warner, and another time before that, Tom Brady, turned out to be really good. Look at the league now. Who are your starters? Most of them are first-round picks. Maybe not 1-1 overall, but a lot of them are first-rounders. the point is, like, the people that do this for a living do it for a living because they know what they're doing. Jake Fromm is not a hidden gem. We're not spending time on that. And if it turns out that something weird happens and he plays in the future and he turns out to be awesome, then I'm the idiot. But we're not wasting time on it now on the first show of 2024. That's the end of that. We'll do the Brissett thing that is actually worth us talking about and our time next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
have to let anybody know until tomorrow, so we're just going to wait.
You could tell us now.
No, I think, we don't want to give them any head start on anything.
Oh, that was a good try, Nikki Javala. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So Ron Rivera has declined to name a starter for Sunday. We'll take some more calls on it today, and then obviously tomorrow after we get one, 301-230-0980. The reason I think I'm pretty 50-50 between Howell and Brissett. Here's the argument for Brissett. Brissett allows you to do the thing that you've been talking about doing with Sam Howell for weeks. Sam Howell, we got to evaluate him. We got to evaluate him. We got to evaluate him. We got to see more tape. Okay, we've seen a lot. We have a good idea at this point of who he is. What about Jahan Dotson? What about your first rounder from last year, who has not been on the same page with Sam Howell the entire year, who in the 5 drives that Jacoby Brissett has played this season has come alive instantaneously, has become a factor, has shown separation that matters, has gotten the ball, has been in a position to succeed. Don't you want to see how he looks? Don't you want to see how your offensive linemen look, a young Sadiq Charles or Chris Paul with a quarterback who's got a little bit more savvy, a little bit more height as well as an interior lineman? Like, does it look better when Jacoby can see the middle of the field better than Sam can and gets the ball out to some of the checkdowns and stuff faster? Do you want to see how Terry looks? Although Terry is just 54 yards shy of a 1,000-yard season as is, he has clearly come alive and been even better with Jacoby than he has been with Sam, despite what we saw on Sunday. This is why I might lean Brissett on top of the interpersonal factor of I feel like Jacoby deserves it for how he's been this season. And if he wants to go out and get a start, I would be like, yeah, man, like you've been great. We're going to reward you for being a great teammate. And by the way, it's better for everyone else. So as opposed to the antithesis of most of the year where there were sacrifices made because you're trying to develop a young quarterback because it's the best thing long-term for your franchise. And you just hope that it's a minor drop off from your young to your vet or your vet to your young guy. And that over the course of the season, that gap shortens, and then ultimately your young guy is better than your vet, which is what you hoped and didn't happen. At this point, you just play the vet. Even if you don't have anything to play for win-loss-wise, it's better from an evaluation standpoint. I know the number one counterpoint to that is if you lose, you probably get the number 2 overall pick. But at the end of the day, like, that's not something that Ron Rivera is probably considering, even if maybe he should be, or maybe someone above him should be and should dictate that decision. And just be like, hey, man, it's the last week of the season. We want to see Sam one more. Sorry, we're not. You can't play Jacoby. Is what it is. You don't like it, you can quit. So that's kind of where I sit. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Scott. Scott, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, how's it going?
I'm good, Scott. How are you?
I'm good. So I got a couple key points here I think we should all take into account. First, you mentioned something earlier about moving Wiley possibly to left guard. I don't know why that hasn't been done this season. Cornelius Lucas at right tackle. And I would love for you and Logan to, like, just a podcast idea, talk about players on this team that may have just not coached right, but also just out of position. Maybe Benjamin St. Juice is better at free safety or something like that. But that's a whole other thing.
We definitely this year have talked about specifically for St. Juice, like, I don't know, we don't really know why they took him out of the nickel. Like, he was good there. So,
right.
Yeah, no, that's a good. Right. We've talked about it in spurts, but to put it in one pod could be an interesting one. So, good idea. Thank you. We'll credit you on the show.
I appreciate it. If it's not broke, don't try to fix it unless you're Ron Rivera. So, also, with just the whole Brissett thing, I think that it helps the guy, like you said, the guys develop. You know, maybe Jahan continues to develop. He has some confidence going into the offseason, and some of the other guys. But I think we cannot miss the opportunity of getting the number 2 overall pick if that's a possibility, not just from a quarterback standpoint, but a bargaining chip. If Josh Harris is really into analytics like he certainly is, like, we need that chip. And I would venture to say this. Looking at, like, this draft, most of the quarterbacks in the league tend to have two elite traits. We need to look at that kind of formula, because if you look at a lot of guys who kind of bust out, they might have like one trait that's like big time. But I think guys like a Jalen Daniels, Michael Penix, even in the second round, if you tell me I can get an elite tackle with my first pick, that's going to be a 10-year guy, it's going to be the guy, the next Chris Samuels, Trent Williams, and so forth, and Michael Penix, who slides down because he goes to the combine and they freak out about his injury history, and we get him in the second round, I think that's a winning formula. I think that's something that we could actually go forward with. But I'm scared by these guys who have this one good trait, because if something happens, they, like, to me, Jaden Daniels has an elite trait like a Lamar Jackson. Like, guys who are 6'4", 205 pounds, and run a 4.4, they don't typically grow on trees and have the throwing ability that he does. So I think the fans have to look from that standpoint of roster building. One loss to our hated rival Dallas Cowboys could set us up for the next decade with a stalwart foundational player.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a good investment.
I agree. I appreciate the call a lot. Thanks, Scott. I think that is the thing that we're going to spend the next 4 months talking about, is if you can get a Hall of Fame level, or at least just a Pro Bowl level left tackle or wide receiver who could elevate your offense in the same way that Jamar Chase elevated the Bengals, is that worth it? And then you can get your quarterback in round 2. Because I think the other thing that we talk about, this number 2 overall pick, that means they also have the number 2 pick in the second round and the third and the fourth. I don't think they owe any picks off the top of my head. That might not be true, but they have Chicago's pick, which is dropping because Chicago is been playing well, which I think is actually a good thing, because I'd rather have the pick slide down a little bit in the second round and not have to compete with the Bears for a head coach in Matt Eberflus. If Matt Eberflus stays, which is now looking like it's going to be the case, I would rather have that scenario. But I think it's important to remember, like, let's say even if they take a quarterback at 2, and let's say Penix drops the second round, and you can get, a team that's 7th in the second round to trade up and give you another third rounder, like that could be, or if they've got 2 seconds, can they trade up their late second and their early second for your top of the second round second? And now they get to take their quarterback that you've already taken, and you get a left tackle. Or there is a ton of X receivers in this draft, which is something that I think this team should definitely look at, and slide Terry to the Z, get him off the ball a little bit and let him do some things I think his skill set's better suited for. Like, there's a lot of machinations. The good news is they've got a lot of good options. The bad news is you don't know which one's the best option, and we'll obviously have a better idea as we get through the draft process, but you won't know for sure until 5 years from now, when you have the ability to look back and see how everybody played. We will talk about this more next with Michael Phillips of 910 The Fan and the Washington Times. We will talk to Phillips, and then we will go around the NFL at 5:30. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And just after 5 o'clock, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
It's not a Monday, but it is our first show of the week, which means we welcome in our good friend Michael Phillips. Michael, Happy New Year.
Hey, we did it. We made it. 2024. We made it to the end of the season. We pat ourselves on the back. We did it, man.
We did, although I will say our show has included a call for Jake Fromm today, so I would like to go back.
Well, you may not like this segment then, right? I mean, I'm going to go hard that it's important to lose and it's important to get this draft pick, and I mean, there would be few better ways to do that than let's see some Jake Fromm.
That's at least like a cogent way of going about it. It is admitting that Jake Fromm is the worst quarterback option in terms of winning. No, Michael, we had a call saying the Commander should play Jake Fromm to find out in case he's the next Kurt Warner or Tom Brady.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, I feel bad for even moderately associating with that take. Uh-oh.
So can we go back to 2023 or what? What's the deal here?
Well, catch you next year. This one's already
I feel like the meme with the Simpsons character where the dude walks in, puts his hat on, puts it right back out, and leaves. That's what I felt like in that first hour of the show and that fielding that phone call. All right. In all seriousness, though, how definitive are you ready to be on? I mean, I feel like you've kind of been there the last couple of weeks, but. What did Sam Howell show you on Sunday, and what effect does that have on the franchise?
I think Sam Howell will be on this roster next year. I just don't think there's a ton of trade value there that you could mine, and you're not going to cut him. He's a young quarterback who has shown talent, and this is not a Sam Howell comment, Craig. This is a roster comment. There are a lot of players on this team that we just don't know if they're any good or not. And that is because they have not been coached well this year. They have not been schemed well this year. I think that speaks for itself. I don't think I have to back up that assertion, right? But, if you're talking about, Sam Howell, look, he has not earned the right to be QB1 next year going into the year. I think even he would tell you that after the way the season has gone. But I think it would be an equally big mistake to say, well, this kid has proven he can never play in the NFL or something outrageous like that. We don't know that. We need to see what he can do with a competent offensive line, a year of growth. It's not hard to look back and find examples. Kirk Cousins is certainly one. Guys who did not look like NFL quarterbacks in their first calendar year of playing, then ended up looking like NFL quarterbacks. That could be him. The irresponsible thing to do would be to say that might be him, so let's continue to build a franchise around him. No, you got to keep looking elsewhere, but I have no objections to keeping him around.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. And the guy that Logan and I have been using on our pod is Jalen Hurts. Was not particularly impressive. They won anyway because everything around him was so good in Philadelphia, but that allowed Jalen to grow into the guy that he is. That Goff in Detroit, very similarly, they've done a good job of creating an environment that's allowed him to almost get the benefits of sitting a year like Mahomes did without actually sitting. Where you're out there, you're getting information, but you're not getting so much that you overload and overheat in the way that Sam did this year because they were throwing the ball 50 times a game. That kind of begs the question then, and this is a question I probably will ask you multiple times, and we'll have full-on discussions about it philosophically over the next 4 months, but then what's the bar for the next guy? If Sam Howell is some talented but not quite good enough quarterback who you anticipate having around as a backup, you need to draft a guy who's obviously better than that. So what happens if you look at Jaden Daniels and Drake May and whoever else, and you go I don't know if any of those guys are any better. How do you approach this quarterback position, or are you in kind of they might not be, but we better find out and take a flyer camp?
Yeah, right. And so you talk about you're not going to be in this position probably again for the next 5 years, right? Unless there's some kind of trade, Bears situation where you end up back here through some good luck. I don't think I'm overly optimistic or anything. I just don't think they'll be in this position again for a while. It's statistically speaking, it's hard to be this bad. And certainly a new coaching staff, new energy is going to provide some amount of lift. This isn't Carolina they're not in a doom spin cycle here. Even if they have a bad year next year, it's far more likely a bad year looks like 7 than it looks like 4. So you need to be very careful about what you do here, knowing you may not be in this position again for a while or for your entire tenure if you're the next coach, right? And Kyle Shanahan has talked about that before, and kind of that was the impetus of the Trey Lance swing, right? Like, this is my chance to get a highly regarded quarterback. I need to take advantage of having that opportunity, regardless of whether it pans out or not. I don't know that I fully agree with that, but it's certainly a legitimate school of thought here. There's 2 ways to go here, right? You try to find an elite quarterback, and then everything else takes care of itself. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously. They stink at several major offensive skill positions, and yet Patrick Mahomes covers it up very nicely. Joe Burrow covered over Cincinnati's flaws for a long time because he's that dude, right? So that's the cheat code. You get that and you're good to go. There's another way to do it, which is you build a great roster, you plug in a guy, you let him develop, let him learn, let him grow. That option's available to you as well. You could trade down. You could take a left tackle. You could take Marvin Harrison Jr. There's lots of foundational pieces you can get out of this pick and out of a top 5 situation. The salary cap space is there. You can go about it. You would view that as the hard way, so to speak, because it doesn't involve the shortcut. But if you do it right, that's probably also the more consistent way. If you bring in a good general manager, a good coach, you give them good pieces to build with, you're probably more likely to have long-term success that way than rolling the dice. But when you roll the dice, you might just go ahead and skip to the final space on the board, and that's pretty cool too.
Right, you pass go and you collect $200, which is nice. Michael Phillips, 910 The Fan down in Richmond, writing for the Washington Times as well, of course, covering the Commanders with us weekly here on the Hoffman Show. There's starting to be a lot of names that are bantied about. Standing did a whole article on it. I know Kimes mentioned a bunch. Nikki wrote something for the Post with a list of like head coaching candidates. As you've made your way through your list and you've started to compile a favorites list, are there any either on the executive or the coaching side that have jumped out to you as either particularly interesting or like definitive favorites?
I mean, obviously with Adam Peters in the building, it was hard not to think about it this weekend, right? Like that. Not to say he's the favorite or anything. I think San Francisco will do what they need to do to keep him around. But I actually went over the 49ers locker room. We saw they've got a player from Richmond, Cleveland Farrell, who's one of their pass rushers. And we were chatting for a while and just so impressed by how that organization works top to bottom. So, you couldn't go wrong there. I don't think he'll be available, but I think he'd be a slam dunk, of course.
For whatever it's worth, I agree with you. I think they'll wind up – I mean, they actually already did the first step, which is they promoted John Lynch to team president. They'll just name Peters the GM, and Lynch is a bit of a figurehead in some ways anyway. So Peters, I think don't get your Adam Peters hopes up is what I would tell anybody, not just in Washington, but anybody anywhere.
I think that's very correct and very astute. I agree with that as well. I would say I'm less interested in names and more interested in structure, simply because there's not one definitive way to play this, right? I mean, we probably think, there's a phrase for you. What we know of Josh Harrison, the way he runs teams, is he's probably going to empower a general manager and be big on the personnel side and the analytics side. That doesn't mean he's necessarily guaranteed to do that, though, right? I mean, if you can get a Harbaugh, the structure looks differently than if you can't get a Harbaugh, right? And if you decide that's the way to go, there are different ways to do the GM structures with VPs of player personnel, with team presidents who are involved. You mentioned John Lynch, a guy who's kind of involved, but not entirely involved in that side of the building, but had the title for a while. I find the structure discussion to be almost as fascinating as the names themselves, because it speaks to how ownership views this, but also how they see the best candidates available and how they fit into these different jobs.
Definitely. So there's a name that's been bantied about a lot, Dawn Apon, which is a name I heard a couple weeks ago. And Nikki Javala, I think, had the most detailed reporting on a potential role for her which would be like an executive vice president of football operations. What do you think of her specifically? And it's really like, I mean, her skill set, I don't know how familiar you are with Dawn Apon. If you have a good file on her, by all means, unload it on our audience. But like, she comes from she's worked for teams before, but she's currently like one of the top lieutenants to Roger Goodell at the NFL League's office, or the NFL League office. And for an ownership group that is coming from outside the league, like, I think that's pretty intriguing. And so what would you make of that structure and of her specifically as kind of someone who knows her way around the NFL?
Yeah, and you nailed it right. That league knowledge is very impressive here, and for a group that certainly has aspirations of being thought of as the Steelers, the 49ers, the Ravens, kind of one of those foundational teams, the chance to put a cornerstone in there. She obviously knows who's who around the league as well. So you're not just picking her, you're kind of grabbing a big staff as well around her, which is very appealing, obviously. Your downside's right. She's been with the league now for almost 7 years, I believe, has been out of the game in that day-to-day sense for a little while. I don't think that's a reason she couldn't do the job. I just think that's something that needs to be put on the table here, right? The league has changed immensely in the last 7 years. She's followed that, obviously being with the league, but not in that day-to-day with the team. Doesn't have any of those, like, was in a slam dunk situation, right, where you talk about, like, young guys in Philly, young guys in Baltimore, like, they've seen it done at the highest level. Was with Belichick for a minute and a half there. I think that's intriguing. I don't think Bill Belichick's going to be the coach here, but that's not the way I see it shaking out. But certainly having a Rolodex like that is very impressive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think, what she would do, I would presume, is like she goes and hires a GM and then oversees like the integration of systems, which is a very Josh Harris-y type of terminology of like, okay, we have this analytics department, we have player performance, like the strength and conditioning, we have scouting. Like, my job is to make that all work together and make sure that everyone's taking the resources available to them and maximizing, which is the way good organizations are run. Middle management is actually important, Michael. It's often very annoying, but I think the best companies have it. And like she'd be on the higher end of middle management, but that would kind of be her job.
As we talked about structure, right? That's a structure where right now, Ron is in charge of the personnel side of the building. This would be a personnel person in charge of the personnel side of the building and probably having a little more say than the coach in terms of the way the building is run and the way players are brought in. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think some of the most successful NFL franchises have been run that way over the past decade to 2 decades. So I think there's a ton of merit to really beefing up on that side of the football. The coach-centric model behind Ron Rivera was always a bit of a Hail Mary, and I think we've seen where that's led us.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to that opening press conference. Who did Dan cite? It was Belichick. Was it Tomlin? Who else was he like, this is why we need to go coach-centric?
Did he name Andy Reid, even though that's not true?
Right. I feel like, yes, that was the other name. But like Tomlin, same thing. Like, Tomlin's incredible. Tomlin's in charge of a lot of stuff. Tomlin has a heavy influence, and he should, because he's now clinched 16 straight 8-win seasons, which is nuts.
Yep.
But he's not in charge. Like, they have a GM.
Right. So, I think the best coaches understand we're going to have a GM because that's good for me, even if they have that kind of authority, right? It's good to defer it. It just felt like from the get-go, this was like, Ron's here and he's going to have final say because that's good for a coach to be all-powerful. Like, it feels like the most powerful coaches know they can't extend themselves that thin.
Right. And then the other thing, too, is like, if you're hiring people where the power structure is important, you're hiring the wrong people. Right. If you want to hire, that was a bar. Write that down in the Washington Times. If you want to have a really good front office coaching staff, football operation of any kind, you want to hire people that work together, where the power structure is important for dictating roles and everybody does their job, and then everybody feels like they've got their part of the thing. And that is how you build a successful organization. If it is, hey, if we get in a fight, who gets to win? You've already lost.
What was the Bruce Allen phrase? It's a Redskins decision. Every time it's, no, it doesn't matter who's the final say. It's a Redskins decision, which was a very polite way of saying it's my decision.
Right. Well, that was the problem is that meant it was Bruce's decision and he just didn't want to say it. But like when they make a decision in San Francisco, I tend to think it actually is a 49ers decision.
Right. Yeah. So the best organizations, there's enough credit to go around, and the rest of it takes care of itself. And I think they have the potential to build that here. I also think it's fascinating to build this group and then throw them into what will be the most important offseason of the decade, this one, with the salary cap space, with the draft picks and all that, right out of the gate, right? So there's no ramp-up period. They are coming in to crush it right away, their first spring, their first free agency, their first draft. That, to me, really raises the stakes here. I'd feel more comfortable if and I know this wasn't going to be possible, but if Harris had somehow been able to buy the team last March, install everybody
right.
then, and they would have had a year together in the building going into this very important offseason. I'm not saying it's not going to work because I'm a generally optimistic person. I'm just saying, like, ooh, that is a lot to jump into.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know, like, you don't typically come in, even as a new general manager, and, like, fire the scouts because they've been working all year. And if you do, then you got to go find other ones. And, like, other teams are not going to let go of their good scouts in the middle of the most important time of the year. So you're kind of like, obviously, if you're a general manager, especially one with a scouting background, you've been doing some of your own evaluations. You'll watch plenty of tape. You'll grind it out yourself, and you'll have strong opinions. And like the best evaluators, Adam Peters has had a very good track record of being able to suss out who's good and who's not, and hitting on Fred Warner and Hufanga and name all of these just ridiculously good football players that they employ out there in San Francisco. But like whoever comes in is going to be looking at the same scouts who have drafted the last Ron Rivera era of players. But I think it's also important to point out, and Michael, you can probably detail this as someone who's been on the beat even longer than I was, like that the scouting isn't always the problem when you take players that you shouldn't, or you overdraft someone, because you essentially give them a report. You're like, hey, this is who this guy is, this is their strengths or weaknesses. Excuse me. And then the decision maker makes the final call with that information. And that final decision maker is pretty important, even if the scouts don't change.
Yeah, right. And so when you're talking about a first-year operation, who gets the final say is super important because everybody's still feeling out the situation, right? It's a little harder to be collaborative when you're also building the seeds of that relationship and what that relationship's going to become and what it will be down the line. So that's a hugely important call, especially given the draft pick they're going to be sitting on. I mean, I don't envy that. I really don't. Like, it's an attractive job. It's a super cool job for somebody to come into. It's also a ton of pressure to hit right away. And to steer this back to Ron a little bit, like, I remember when he drafted Jamin Davis, I'm sure I said on your show, I said it many places, I think this will work out because I trust Ron to evaluate linebackers. Like, that's his career, is being a linebacker and being around great linebackers. So if he says this guy's worth the 18th pick overall or whatever it was, I'm on board with that. I believe he is. I would just like to come clean. I was wrong. It was a bad evaluation. So sometimes you can drink your own Kool-Aid a little bit too.
No, that's 100% true. And, then again, if Ron had been coaching the linebackers for 4 years, how different does Jamin's career look compared to Jack coaching them, where linebackers looked confused till the moment he was gone? Like,
couldn't have been worse.
Yeah. So there's a lot to it there, and it shows the evaluation meeting, the coaching meeting, the other players around. Like, do you have supplementary skill sets, all that kind of stuff? And you're right. It's a really tough job, not just because of the pressure, but because to echo something you said earlier in the interview, like, we don't know who's good on this team. And that is a real problem in terms of evaluation moving forward. But then again, we might not. The scouts might, and that's why they're scouts and we're radio guys. Michael Phillips, host, MP on the mic, 10 a.m. to noon. weekdays on 910 The Fan in Richmond, which you can listen to anytime, anywhere on the free Odyssey app. You can also read him in the Washington Times. Michael, thank you as always. We'll do this again next week, as long as we're not in the middle of the darkest part of Black Monday.
One more time, baby. Let's go.
And if we are, then we'll talk on Tuesday.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, cool. Michael Phillips, everybody. Craig. Thank you. See you. Happy New Year. All right, that is Michael Phillips with us on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, how did one Anthony Haney close out 2023 with his NFL picks? How did I do mine? I actually don't know that I did great. So
Craig?
Yeah?
I got every game correct.
Did you?
No.
I didn't think so. How many did he get correct?
Possibly.
We'll tell you next. We'll go around the NFL. Wild weekend. Plenty to talk about beyond if Anthony and I pick the right side. Next, it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. You can join us live on YouTube daily as well at the Team 980. Subscribe there. My hope, Anthony, is that by the time we get to the Super Bowl, we can be at 1,000 subscribers on the Team 980 YouTube channel. We'll have been doing that for like 7-8 months at that point. It was really the summer that we launched it. And then we can show off on Super Bowl week and be like, hey, look at us. Broadcasting live from Radio Row on Wednesday through Friday of Super Week. That'd be cool.
How many more do we need?
We're under 200 away.
Okay.
So we're gonna need to have a good month. Oh. But I think it's doable. So let's do it. If you are watching on YouTube and you got other friends who enjoy stuff on YouTube, like tell your friends. Like, hey, 980, good stuff. Hoffman Show, live daily. Eventually, I do think within this calendar year, other shows as well. So, just something to consider, something to throw out there. A goal, a New Year's resolution, if you will. Feels good. By the way, how was your New Year's? I know you were at church, and then you looked like you had a wedding on New Year's Day.
Yeah. So New Year's Eve, I went to Dirty Habit.
Okay. Which sounds like the opposite of church.
What? Yeah, sort
of. Dirty Habit.
Yeah, it's right over there by Capital One Arena.
Okay.
Not too far from Buttery. But yeah, we went there for dinner. Brought in the New Year in the church. And then, yesterday, my girlfriend's mom got married.
Congratulations to the newlyweds.
Yeah, so that's what I was doing this morning. I was cleaning up, because we had a little after party, or like an after gathering, I guess, at the crib. So focused on that this morning, and then came into work.
Came into the office, and now we're working.
Good start to the new year.
Yeah.
Love is in the air.
Love is in the air. What a start to 2024. The opposite of Jake Fromm calls. Okay, sorry. Now I feel like I'm beating up on Jake Fromm. I'm really not. I'm beating up on. Anyway, let's stop beating up on people. Let's go around the NFL. Week 17 style. We went into the weekend with 24 teams still alive for the playoffs. Thursday night, one clinch. That was the Browns, of course, over the Jets. Talked about that game a little bit on Friday. We both got that right. We both picked Cleveland. Saturday. Cowboys-Lions. By now you know what happened. Cowboys get lucky. The referees screw up a call at the end on a 2-point conversion by the Lions that should have counted. And there's not a lot to do about it. It's so sad, man, because the Lions did almost everything you could possibly ask. The one thing you could have asked is for more clarity because they did try to confuse the Cowboys and instead confuse the refs. And then I think the other thing that you could ask is Brad Allen, the referee who has had a terrible month of December and culminating with this call, is he calls out the wrong guy on the headset. He's like, number 70 is eligible, 70 is eligible. And 70 wasn't eligible. It was 68. And so at that point, if you're the Lions, do you go back to him and be like, no, 68? And then it draws attention to it and your play's screwed? Or do you just hope that they figure it out? And, honestly, it's like one of those things that you wish they'd just go back and change it, like review it and count it. But you can't do that, even one, because there's not a mechanism to do that. And two, because once you go 70 is eligible instead of 68, like the Cowboys are playing that as if 68 is ineligible. And it's just bad refereeing. Like there's no other way around it. And I think there's got to be a way to have repercussions for referees who don't perform well. And I'm not saying they should be fined, because like players play badly and they don't get fined for it. And these are human beings who make mistakes, but their mistakes are not part of the game. Their job is to implement the rules as if they were robots. Just implement the rules, stay out of the way otherwise. Do the things you're supposed to do. And so, I don't know that it's fining referees, but like if you can't do the job, you need to be demoted. And whether that is you're no longer a head referee and you go to being like a back judge, or you lose your NFL job, like there's got to be a way to do better than this. And Brad Allen has had a terrible year. He's not very good at the job by NFL standards. And I think the funniest thing going on the internet right now is Adam Schefter will not lay off the guy. And I think that's bizarre because Adam Schefter never does stuff like that. And Adam's doing it in a reporter way where he's like, he also missed this call. ESPN reviewed video that he missed this call. Brad Allen, the referee who screwed up last week, is on national television again. Like, he is dragging this dude. And I don't know whether that is him doing it because the NFL is, like, pissed, or he's doing it because this is an area where he feels strongly and he feels like he can needle the NFL when so often it feels like he winds up being a vehicle for a lot of NFL messaging. So, I don't know, man. It's not great. And it really sucks for the Lions. Like, on top of losing the game now because the Eagles lost, which we'll get to. Anthony, if the Lions had won this game, which they did, if it had counted in the win column for them, they're the number 2 seed if they win. Instead, the Cowboys will be the 2 seed if they beat the Commanders on Sunday, no matter what the Lions do. And that means if there is a game between those two teams, the 2 and 3 seed, very possible, if not likely, that it will be in Dallas instead of Detroit. So Lions fans get robbed a home game, or an extra home game. Of course, they're going to have to win their opener, which will be at home because they are division champion. But I think the good news for Detroit, if I'm Dan Campbell, I'm like, you want to know what? F it, boys. Like, we just proved we can beat Dallas. If the official calls the right thing, we would have won that game in Dallas. Nobody's beaten them there all year. We're going to go do it. We're going to ruin their season. Fine. We'll see them in a couple weeks. But I hate this. I hate it so much.
Yeah, I hated that for the Lions as well. I think to your point, about having home field advantage, I think it goes a long way. You look at some of the games between the Chiefs and the Bengals, or you look at the Bills and the Chiefs, like things of that nature. Home field matters in those circumstances. And the fact Dallas has played so well at home and not so well on the road, I think can definitely have some implications, come playoff time. But it did suck to see the Lions lose. They were right there. I think it was a great play call. And, the refs got it wrong on that play, but at the same token, you can't leave it in the games of the ref. You can't leave the game in their hand.
Yeah, that is the other thing.
Like, it does suck, though.
It's
that
like,
one play.
It is one play, but, like, how many other plays? And that's the thing you do as a coach, too, is, like, you get up in front of the team and be like, boys, if we had made these other 5 plays that had nothing to do with the refs, then it's not in the refs' hands. And so, did we get jobbed? Yep. But we could have put ourselves in a position not to get jobbed.
Yep.
We could have not allowed CeeDee Lamb 227 receiving yards. What a player that guy has turned out to be. Prescott, 345, 2 touchdowns in the game as well. But yeah, Cowboys now 8-0 at home, and that's how they will finish. Their 9th road game, 17th game overall. Of course, here this weekend against Washington. Lions finish up with the Vikings. Also, that cost me a win, which I'm not psyched about. It did cost you a win.
But do you think they should have kicked the field goal at the end after, the 2-point conversion got negated?
That's another good question. Once you're back at the 6, yeah, you probably just kick the extra point and play for overtime.
Like you had.
I mean, and that's another thing too. Is like, who knows? At that point, do you just play for overtime? I think you probably do. But I respect Dan Campbell as this is who he is, and they're on the road, and the players have no doubt that that's what they're doing, and so it is what it is. Yeah, I probably would have kicked, but whatever. Yeah. So yeah, Lions 11-5, Cowboys 11-5 going into week 17. 49ers, of course, beat the Commanders. They clinch the 1 seed in the NFC. So all roads through San Francisco as long as they win. Bills 27, Patriots 21. A nice plucky outing from the Patriots, who put up 21 points, finished 6 points shy of winning. But I think they look definitively better right now than the Jets, Anthony. And holding on to your breath for tiebreakers is one thing. If the Patriots just beat the Jets and the Commanders lose to the Cowboys, that number 2 pick is Washington's. There's no tiebreaker needed.
Yeah, I mean, the defense somehow is making plays out there, but also there's been a resurgence of Zeke Elliott a little bit. I like what I've seen out of him the last couple of weeks, so hopefully he can go to a contender next year. But yeah, the Patriots, like Bill Belichick, he's not going out. He's not going out there to lose games. He's trying to win and they've been in position to win like the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, their defense is good. Belichick, I don't think that he's going to wind up – I mean, he could be a head coach next year. I don't think he would take a DC job at this point, but maybe. Yeah. I mean, that dude loves football. Like, what if a Ben Johnson is like, hey, Bill, you want to come be my DC, an assistant head coach? You think Belichick would do it if he didn't have a head coaching job on the table, or he'd be like, I'm good? I could see him doing it. The Wade Phillips to Sean McVay.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's more likely to take
I think he's more likely to take like an executive job.
Yeah, he likes power.
Or he's like an advisor. But I don't know. If I'm a head coach, I don't know if I want. Like, part of me would love Bill Belichick as an advisor. Part of me would hate it. So that is next week though. Patriots Jets. The Bills obviously have the Dolphins. That is the Sunday Night Football game 250, or it used to be game 256. I don't know what 17 weeks winds up being. It's the last game of the regular season on Sunday Night Football on NBC for the AFC East crown. Falcons and Bears. The Bears continue to roll here in the back half of the season. They're 5-3 at Soldier Field this year. The Falcons, meanwhile, are a mess at quarterback. I mean, they keep going. This is one thing that I hate that Arthur Smith is doing. It's like, play Ritter, he stinks. Play Heineke, he stinks. Once you benched your guy, you just ride it out with Taylor. Just ride it out with Heineke. I don't know why you bench him in this football game, because what happens? Ritter comes back in and throws another pick. So we'll see what Atlanta does in the final week of the regular season. They're somehow still alive for the NFC South. Bears, meanwhile, put up 37. Fields, 268 and a touchdown through the air. DJ Moore, 159 and a touchdown. And Matt Eberflus is gonna keep his job. And by the way, there were chants in Chicago. We want Fields. We want Fields. A lot of Bears fans are perfectly okay with sticking with Justin Fields. And I got to say, it's tempting. If you have put in this much work with him so far, and you've started to see these results at the tail end of the season, go get him Marvin Harrison. Go get him Olu Fashanu. Go get him whoever. Get him some more help. Defense is playing its face off. You're going to add to that side of the ball as well. The Bears, they have to ask, like, are we good enough, or do we reset the clock again and take Caleb Williams, knowing that Fields is going to be due a contract here in a couple of years?
That's exactly what I was thinking. You're going to have to pay this man next year. Like, there's so many pros and cons so many pros to having a young quarterback on his rookie deal and having to pay Justin Fields, in a year or two.
But you can pay guys
hurt you a little
now.
bit.
You can pay. That's the thing. They have so much space.
Yep, they do.
So much space that they can pay guys and keep some space for Fields and use a first-round pick on either the best receiver to come out in a decade or a really, really good left tackle. Because that's probably what they would do, is either Fashanu or Harrison if they stay at 1. Or they could trade back and get more picks. I mean, they did it last year. They're not afraid to trade out the number 1 pick. And, if you can wind up with multiple, how many top 50 picks do you want? Like that, you want to build a roster where you can afford to pay Justin Fields to get a bunch of top 50 picks, and you don't have to pay anyone else. It's not a bad plan. I'd also consider trading him to Atlanta and taking Caleb Williams number 1, because I think Fields in Atlanta is a match made in heaven.
Would you, if you're the Commanders, would you trade for Justin Fields?
No.
Okay.
I'm not interested in him unless I have a very specific kind of offensive coordinator and like the right pieces around. And I think from the money standpoint, it's not worth trading for him when you got to pay him that soon. I think their timeline is more rookie than it is.
Yep.
Where like Atlanta's got London and Bijan and Pitts and a head coach that like wants to run with the quarterback, and their defense is actually pretty solid and getting better with some of the additions they've made. So it's just a lot to consider. All right, Raiders, Colts, Minshew and company pull this one out despite 2 touchdowns from Aiden O'Connell to Devontae Adams. Colts still in the playoff race. How you feeling about your boys coming out of this one?
Hey, Craig, I was so happy these guys pulled it off, because next week Week 18, I will be in Indy. I will be heading there Friday. We have to get fitted for Zaire's wedding. But, going to the game is also an added, perk. So we will be there Saturday night, prime time, against a divisional rival. I'm going with the Colts again next week. I'm giving you my early pick, but I was so happy these guys got the job done.
And I would love to go to that game. That sounds fun.
It's going to be crazy. Lucas Oil, Saturday night. Good gracious.
How much are the flights to Indy right now?
I got mine for $123, and I got mine like
round trip?
No.
Okay.
I got a round trip. Yeah, I don't know. I usually get mine like one way at a time because sometimes the little flight rates can be a little tricky. I don't like flying to Indy, though. I don't like it.
Why?
The flights, they're just not, friendly, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not friendly at all.
I typically, that's a flight where if you have any status on your airline of choice, for me, it's American, you typically get upgraded. So I've typically enjoyed my flights to Indy. I typically wind up in first class, and I don't, it's not a long flight.
Yeah.
So.
It's not that bad.
Did I ever tell you, I think it was on a trip to Indy. It was on either to Indy or Mobile for the Senior Bowl, but there was a Washington team executive who I hated, who, actually, I'll even say who it was. It was Larry Michael. When we were going to, I think it was actually the Senior Bowl one year, and he was on my flight, and I had gotten upgraded to first class, and him walking past me in first class back to coach made my year.
Oh, my God.
Why? Because I'm petty. Rams and Giants. Rams, hold on. 26-25. Kyron Williams, 87 yards, 3 touchdowns. Nakua, another 118. Tyrod, that dude can play. 319, 1 touchdown. The problem is he can play like Sam Howell can kind of play, where he can put up some numbers, but probably not going to win you a ton of football games.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Rams, to be honest. They're continuing to surge. The Giants, they're showing some promise, I guess. But not really.
They look better than they have, earlier in the season, where they look like a discombobulated mess.
Yeah.
But they got to figure out quarterback. That's the thing for them. Do you just roll with Daniel Jones next year, or do you,
you pay him all that money? Why? I think you have to. Granted, he got hurt this season.
They've looked so much better with Tyrod Taylor than they ever did with Daniel Jones this year.
Tyrod also basically gave the game away a little bit. He missed Saquon for a 2-point conversion. I'm talking about one of these, Craig.
He did.
But Tyrod,
he also Saquon also dropped a couple earlier in the game. So there's
he did
all kinds of
a Texas route there that could have gone 60.
Yeah. But I don't know what you do if you're the Giants. I think it depends on who's available to you. Do you like one of these guys at 5? But Jones is going to be there. But I think one of the lessons that's been learned in the league, like what happened in San Francisco, is just because you make a pick or you pay someone, you got to play the best guy. And they picked Trey Lance, and they weren't we got to go back to Trey Lance. Brock Purdy's clearly the better player. Yep. We're just going to go with Purdy. Or better player for us. So we're going to go with Purdy. So you can't be tied to mistakes. If it was a mistake to pay DJ, fine. He'll probably be a good teammate. It seems like the kind of guy that he is. So just let him be a good teammate backup and use a first rounder on someone else. So that's probably what I would do if I was the Giants. But, same kind of thing if you're the Commanders. Do you necessarily have to do it first round? Do you do it in the second round? We got a long way to go till draft time, but they're in a rough spot. Cardinals, they're in a weird spot, by the way. With this win, they are now 4-12. So that's how the Commanders have leapfrogged them. They probably severely cost themselves. Well, maybe not, because the Patriots certainly have a better chance to win than any of these other teams in Week 18. So the Cardinals could wind up bouncing back to 3, but their strength of schedule stronger than the Commanders, thus the weaker schedule versus the weaker record. They wind up tied. The Commanders will have the number 2 pick. Cardinals now 4-12 after Kyler Murray throws for 3 touchdowns, and the Eagles' defense continues to be a huge, huge problem, Anthony. One that I'm legitimately scared about. I think we need to move them potentially in our tiers on Thursday because their defense is so bad.
It is really bad. Eli Ricks, he had another rough outing. Secondary is just I don't get it, to be honest. You go from being a top 3 defense last year to a bottom 3 this year. Maybe it was a defensive coordinator, Gannon. He came back to Philly.
Clearly, Gannon's really good at this.
Exactly. So, very shocking. But I think that, as you said, the Cardinals are in a tough position with Kyler Murray, because do you keep him? Do you move on from him? What do you do with him, to be honest?
I would probably, with the amount that I've paid him, like his contract's a different stratosphere than Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden I'm sitting at 3 and Marvin Harrison is available, I just get Kyler, Marvin Harrison, and we boogie. Like, we drafted our tackle last year.
Yep.
I just get him a stud wide receiver and say, hey man, if you can figure it out, we're in great shape, and if not, we'll know next year that we need to replace you.
Yeah, I feel like defensively, Gannon also just got to make a few tweaks, to some personnel, but he's a great defensive mind. He, did his best against, a highly potent Philly offense. So, huge one for the Cardinals, though.
Yeah, maybe they trade back somewhere in the top 10. Team comes up to take Drake May or whoever, and you wind up with like Dallas Turner, the kid out of Alabama, who had a great quote post-game last night after they lost to Michigan. Hey, man, are you going pro? Oh, yeah, I'm going pro.
I'm out of here, man.
If, ands, or buts about it.
Nope.
Dallas Turner going pro. All right, Saints 23, Bucks 13.
Wow.
Did Tampa know they could win the division? Didn't play like it. Didn't score until the fourth quarter. Tried to mount a mini comeback, but ultimately fell short despite 309 yards from Baker Mayfield. Jags 26, Panthers zippy. And the story from this game, we might have to talk about this tomorrow. We might have to do like some leftovers tomorrow. David Tepper throwing a drink on a Jags fan. This dude sucks, man.
Low character guy, Craig. Low character guy.
Certainly seems like it. I wish I had more to say on this game, but I didn't get a chance to watch it. It was the most important game of the weekend. Ravens 56, Dolphins 19. Lamar 321, 5. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4.
He's still scoring.
5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5th touchdown. I mean, ridiculous what they just did. The Dolphins are good. So are the 49ers. So are the other teams that the Ravens have just boat raced. It's crazy.
I really can't explain it, to be honest. I think they've just gone out here to show everybody in the NFL that they're real, Craig. They're going to the Super Bowl, and it's going to be crazy if Jim Harbaugh and John Harbaugh both win their respective national, or I guess Super Bowl championship.
That would be crazy. And then Harbaugh is certainly going to be a candidate if he wants to go to the NFL.
Yep.
Imagine 2 Harbaughs in the DMV. I know Baltimore's kind of extended DMV, but the BW Parkway corridor. Although getting to Owings Mills, having to do that for joint practice, so it's a little bit past the BW Parkway. Anyway, Texans 26, Titans 3. CJ Stroud, a nice return, threw for a tidy 213 and a score. Steelers behind Mason Rudolph. Wow, putting up some offense. Najee Harris running hard. Steelers 30, Seahawks 23. Steelers staying alive for the playoffs. Seahawks actually are still alive because everyone in the NFC is still alive except for the Commanders. Chargers, Broncos. Broncos 8-8, eliminated from the playoffs, but they get the win behind Jarrett Stidham after a tumultuous week there in Denver. Chiefs able to pull it out in the second half over the Bengals, 25-17. Patty Mahomes, 245 and a touchdown. And the Packers boat race the Vikings, 33-10. Poor Kevin O'Connell is just playing quarterback roulette in Minnesota. Like, he's trying to find something. And, Nick Mullins probably would have been the better option, and he goes to him in the second half. But I give him credit for being like, hey, Jaren Hall's the young guy. We're probably not, even though technically we're still alive for the playoffs, and they still are actually after this loss. It's probably more important for us to get a look at this rookie, and he does. And, obviously Mullins gave him plenty of ammo because of the 4 picks the week before, but just real rough. And, the guy who was shirtless pregame leading the skull chant, I think, is going to be very welcome back in Minnesota next year if they can figure out the contract. Of course, that being Kirk Cousins. If you haven't seen that video, worth your time. Pretty hilarious. That is our trip around the NFL. Anthony, how did we do on the picks? Were you tracking along the way there?
Yes, I was. You went 9-6.
Okay, that's not bad.
And I went 13-3.
Ooh!
Yeah, big week for the boy.
Big
week.
There was like 10 game or so gap, so
11.
So you would need to get 7 over me, which would mean you'd have to pick 7 games differently than me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Probably.
But
not
I told
happen.
you. I mean, to be honest, which games do the Eagles? They should have lost. The Steelers beating the Seahawks, very upsetting.
But it's really more about the ones. I mean, it's a game closer if the refs don't screw up Dallas and Detroit. But hey, nice job out of you. See what happens in Week 17. How close can Anthony get that gap? Maybe he builds some confidence in the next year, and maybe he'll actually beat me next year. Don't count on it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We pick games, and we pick 6 players who we think will have a big impact in the Commanders game. That's how we do it on Fridays, and we review how all that goes on Mondays. Our pick 6, our penultimate one of the season, is next on the Team 980. running for the final hour of our first show in 2024. I'm Craig Hoffman, super producer Anthony Haney alongside. In our final hour will actually be our final last 25 minutes or so here. Maryland basketball, Terps and Purdue coming up at the bottom of the hour. You missed any of our Commanders talk earlier in the show. My thoughts on Sam Howell to open it at 4 o'clock. Anthony said they were good. So, I mean, that seems like something worth going and rewinding and listening to. Also in the process of putting that up on YouTube at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. Of course, the podcast as well. Michael Phillips joined us at 5 o'clock. And right now, it is time for our Pick 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
I'm going to be their biggest and harshest critic, but I'm also their number one fan.
Their number one fan. All right, we pick 6 players on Friday, see how they do in the game, report back here on Monday. And number 1, Anthony Haney, was all yours.
Number 1.
Number 1 was mine, and I had Corn Lucas. I mean, we all knew coming into the game how good the 49ers defense was. And I would say from a protection standpoint, us, giving up only 1 sack, I guess was solid. Trent Scott, he had a couple penalties. But for the most part, I think Sam Howell, he just did a good job of, trying to be quick, decisive, getting the ball out of his hand. So I don't think from a sack perspective, I think from a sack perspective, we did solid. But, Sam Howell still, throwing interceptions. So his sack problem has, decreased, and it's more so on him.
Yeah.
Throwing interceptions.
The interception problem is the problem of the moment, for sure. Corn did a good job. Chase had 1 pressure. Farrell had, 3, I think. The problems, to the extent that they existed pressure-wise, were on the other side. Sam actually did an okay job in this game, too, shifting and sliding protections against some of the blitz packages. Obviously, on the blitz, or on the first pick, it's a cover 0 situation, all-out blitz, and Sam doesn't, it's just, there's a lot on that play where it's could they have checked out of it? Could they have changed the protection? Could he have thrown a different ball? Does Terry need to get back inside sooner? That to me is a last thing. I don't think that's on Terry at all. It's just kind of a bad play call versus that, and sometimes you get got. And there's also just Sam probably, we talked about this on Take Command. Logan said his solution in the play is probably you just backpedal and throw the ball towards the corner of the end zone and hope that Logan Thomas can make a play. You throw the corner route, not to Terry, and you kind of, Stafford does this all the time, and Stafford does it for touchdowns, which is why teams don't blitz him like this very often. Sam tries to go to, he's it's man, got to throw to Terry, and he throws a bad ball. But Cord, good player. Did a good job. PFF graded him out pretty well. And they were good in the run game. And some of those big runs came off that left side. So good job, Cornelius Lucas.
Number 2.
Cam Curl. He was a Washington Commanders defensive player in the game. Unfortunately, I picked a bunch of defensive guys, and that's kind of going to be my analysis for all of them, except for my last crew. But, nobody played really well defensively for them in this game. They gave up a ton of plays. They just let the Niners drive on them the entire time. The run game stuff was bad. They gave up some chunks in the passing game. I will say they didn't give up any blown coverages, so that was nice. The communication was a little bit better. I think Quan Martin deserves a lot of credit for that. And actually, my Cam Curl take that I'm kind of thinking about right now. I'm not ready to definitively say this yet, but the trajectory's there. Quan Martin's making it easy to move on from Cam Curl. I was listening.
Move on? Okay.
You have to, one of the reasons this team is in trouble is because they keep repeating the same dumb mistake. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, guy's going to be a free agent. Let's draft his replacement. Oh, he played well. Got to re-sign him anyway. And now you've got positional duplicity plus holes somewhere else because you drafted the replacement instead of drafting someone to play with the guy. And they did it with Duran. They drafted Phil Mathis to replace Duran and then kept Duran. They drafted, who's the other one? I know there's another big one. Wow, I cannot believe I'm blanking. I was literally just thinking of it. Who else have they drafted high? Who else have they signed to big money? They signed Terry to big money. I mean, they kind of did that to... that's what it was. It was Jahan and Terry.
Oh.
Well, like, they knew that Terry was going to be expensive, and it's like, just in case we don't re-sign him, let's draft John. And then they got Terry signed later on that offseason. Because remember, Terry signed in, like, July. So, like, they've done this multiple times, and it's like, if you're going to draft the replacement, let the guy walk or franchise and trade him. And I don't think Cam's going to cost that much, but he might. But, like, think about who Quan is. He's a guy that plays a bunch of different positions. His Buffalo nickel seems to be a really good fit for him. He's played some in the post and, like, gotten better. What does that sound like? Sounds like Cam Curl.
Yeah.
So, do I think those two can play together? Absolutely. Do I think that, like, Cam Curl's not worth paying? Not necessarily. But, like, if Quan's the better communicator, I want him on the field all the time, and I want him in that back end. And if you like Defoe and you like Percy, and you want to get I want to get another veteran back there anyway, where's Cam's spot? Like, this is the business. It's not me speaking negatively on Cam Curl, other than to say he hasn't played a level that demands that you pay him top dollar and you keep him no matter what. Quan's did a good job. I trust the process on Quan and other people, but that's the trajectory I'm on. I need to do a little bit more research on that first before I'm like definitive.
Number 3.
Number 3 was my guy, Terry McLaurin. I would say, for the most part, Terry had a solid game.
Yeah, he's one of their better offensive players.
Still, I would love to see him get more targets. I want to say Sam Howell's first 3 quarters, he had 18 dropbacks, and he completed 13 of 18 those first 3 quarters. So I think our run game was like going, so we didn't necessarily need to involve Terry as much. But for the most part, when he did get his chances, he made the most of them. And I still would love to see him get to 1,000 yards on this season. So hopefully against Dallas, he can get those 54 yards.
Yeah, that would be great. He has caught passes from 11 different players, 10 quarterbacks, and Logan Thomas on a trick play back in 2020. Shout out Nikki Javala for looking that up. There's also one quarterback who did catch a pass from. I didn't look at who that was, but it has been a tumultuous ride for Terry. He continues to be who he is, which is really, really good. You can get him. I love the slot fade. It's like, why can't he do that more often? I know he's not a guy like CeeDee Lamb who you just move around all willy-nilly, but like, you can get him some good matchups with sheer alignment more often, I think. All right, number 4.
Number 4.
Cody Barton, who was a player on the Commanders defense. Like, he didn't grade out very well PFF-wise, but like, I just think generally speaking, the better cohesiveness of this unit the last couple of weeks since Ron took over has coincided with Cody coming back, and that's not coincidence. Again, would I upgrade on that position in a heartbeat if I had like a stud middle linebacker available to me, either in free agency or the draft? Absolutely. But are you dead in the water with a bad defense guaranteed if Cody Barton's your middle linebacker? I don't think the way he's played the second half of the year, you can say that. I think he's done a pretty good job in pass coverage. He had a couple nice like high leveraged red zone type of snaps on Sunday. I think he's a good communicator. He is a part of their problem on the run defense, though, and that's the thing where I would be looking to probably upgrade from him this offseason. But again, if you can get better play up front and get better play around him, then maybe you can mitigate some of that, and he's worth it on the passing side of it, upside. Which brings us to
number 5.
And Anthony, go ahead and hit number 6 too.
Number 6.
Because these guys go together. You got your defensive ends and your defensive tackles. Not particularly great, Bob. I thought James Smith-Williams had an okay day. He graded out the highest, but James's like most signature play of the day was missing Brock Purdy on the touchdown. Like, James had a couple of really nice rushes, but he's got to finish. And that's, I know he's got to be kicking himself, because if he finishes some of those, that's money made for him going into a free agent year. But again, like, he's a professional rotational defensive end being asked to be a starter, and those kinds of things happen. Meanwhile, I think inside you've got 2 guys who were supposed to be studs that are playing not very good ball. John Allen graded out as like a 29 on PFF. So not a great day at the office for the old Commanders defensive line, and your run game problems start there.
Yeah, not a good day. And I'm not gonna lie, I was looking back at the game, And I just couldn't believe, how well blocked, the 49ers run game and system is. I was like, oh my gosh, they had the DM right there. Oh, they brought the fullback over to, knock him out. And I'm talking about Juszczyk is really taking these dudes out of the club, all the way out of the play. I couldn't believe it. But, that's what happens when you play the 49ers. You really got to be physical, keep your head on the swivel because there's just so much like misdirection going on there.
There is a lot of this that has to do with Washington. There is a lot more of it that has to do with this is what San Francisco does to everyone except for Baltimore, which is weird because they just didn't really try it against Baltimore. They passed the ball way more than usual against Baltimore, and this was kind of them getting back to who they are. And the game flow allowed them to stay there, and they did. And Washington put up very little resistance to it and started up front for sure. All right, that is our pick 6. When we get back, we wrap up the show. Real things, real people said into real microphones. Wrapping up the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's a Tuesday, even though it feels a bit like a Monday because we're on another holiday week. I guess though this is the launch back into reality, back into real life. Tomorrow on the show, on a Wednesday, we'll talk a little bit about the college football playoff, which we didn't get to today. I'll probably do that with Clinton Yates when he joins us for his Wednesday visit, his first of 2024. There was also, Anthony, what was the story that we were going to talk about earlier? There was a story that I said we should talk about this tomorrow. Kind of leftovers from the weekend. We had a big NBA trade. So it might be a prime day for this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, I can't even remember right now.
I guess you have to go back and listen to the whole show on the podcast until you remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was the top. I think we talked about it before the
show?
I know, before around the NFL. It was definitely something on the show. But whatever
was
that
it your
was.
Story? Oh no, we did. You talked about your story.
What story?
Al Michaels walking by you.
No, not Al Michaels. Larry Michael. Larry different.
Michael. Yeah.
One's a legend. The other one's Larry Michael.
Yeah.
I don't know. Figure it out.
Hurts.
Whatever
yeah,
that was.
I can't remember. Yeah.
Whatever that was, we'll talk about it. Yates will join us. Linnell, by the way, typically Overreaction Tuesday. We'll do exactly what we did last week, where Linnell will pop in on Thursday. And then we got Never Read the Comments, which we got some doozies on that, let me tell you, after a weekend full of more Sam Howell takes and everything that happened with the benching and everything last week. We'll have, and I should say, we should have a starting quarterback tomorrow. So we will start the show with that news, reaction, and calls on that in the 4 o'clock hour. It's also a Wizards game day tomorrow. They got the Cavs in Cleveland tomorrow and Friday. So we get double dose of Dave Johnson this week as well. Of course, Maryland takes our air tonight, coming up at 6:30. Georgetown Hoops, by the way, over on Bloomberg 99.1. Any other housekeeping items, Anthony, to get to before we hit this here final segment of the show?
No.
Okay.
Vibe check, I guess.
Vibe check will be tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. That's that. This is this.
Real things.
We're not going to suck this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Anthony, you didn't put any of these in the rundown, which means you get to drive. You have to tell me what we have, because I have no idea.
So we have
producer-driven segment.
We have Jeff Passan of the MLB.
Yeah,
and,
so Jeff, I can set it up from here. I know that's fine. So Jeff Passan is ESPN's senior Major League Baseball insider, and I feel like sometimes people underestimate the sporting knowledge of the insiders, right? Like Woj's actual basketball knowledge or Schefter's actual football knowledge. Like these are people that are around the smartest people in the sport and talk to them all the time. And while, yes, Schefter knows more about transactions than he does play action passes, he probably knows quite a bit. And same thing for like Woj or Shams in the NBA. And if you had any doubt about Jeff Passan's MLB knowledge, and he did something, I don't know who this was for. It was part of a podcast, I believe. But he just showed his knowledge of Major League Baseball players by looking at their. Sorry, Anthony, that was a stutter, not a blank space for you to hit play. That's my fault. He just basically looked at their baseball reference page and then was able to identify the players. So let's hit the clip.
Hi, my name is Jeff Passan, and I own the Carlos Santana.
Carlos Santana is correct.
Kyle Gibson.
Kyle Gibson.
So again,
correct.
he's just looking at stats.
On base percentage, Mike Moustakas. Dodgers last year didn't get many.
Who they play for? What were the stats?
Yep. Milwaukee.
Got another one.
Past year, Cincinnati. Oh, it's Wade Miley.
Nice.
Nuts.
Diego Dodgers. See, I need to look right at the position. Catcher. Yasmani Grandal.
Yep.
Yeah, and like that's actually kind of
Boston
cheating, but he didn't do that for the first
led
5.
The league in RBIs. Oh my goodness, played in Atlanta. Oh, Adam Duvall.
Adam Duvall.
Started in Atlanta, went to Cincinnati, and back to the Dodgers. Been with the Giants for 3 years. I really should know this one. It's not feeling great right now. I don't own this. Oh my God, this is embarrassing.
He didn't get one by looking at blank or like basically resumes, and he thinks that's embarrassing. Meanwhile, on TNT, they literally play a game with Charles Barkley called Who He Play For, and it's just who does the guy play for right now, and he fails miserably, and that's the bit. Not to say one's right or wrong, because Who He Play For is freaking hilarious. It is high-quality television. But Jeff Passan is, whew, that boy's smart.
Do you think if we did a Commanders edition of what he just did, you'd be able to guess who the players are?
That would actually be really fun. If you give me, had to play for the Commanders between 2015 and, when I started on the beat and now. So, they could have started before that.
Uh-huh.
And now. I don't think I'd do as well as he just did. You forget there's so many dudes.
So many players.
What about? Oh yeah, that guy.
What about Ron Rivera's era? These last 4 years, do you think you could do it?
I don't.
Because I don't think it's been that many.
I mean, there have been so many guys that gone in. You're talking about hundreds of players. Maybe not hundreds. Maybe close to 200 though.
Good gracious.
That cycled in and out of here the last 4 years.
200 is crazy because we have so many people that
many people that has injuries. They've flipped the roster almost. I mean, there's 5 guys that are here from when he started. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's closer to 150.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of dudes. I think it would be fun. I think we should try it at some point in the offseason. A blind resume is. If you had to pick a sport to do that in, what would you pick?
Probably basketball. I pay a lot of attention to basketball, and I also do fantasy basketball. Craig, we haven't even done a fantasy football update because guess what? Yours truly is in the Hoffman Show championship, and I'm trailing right now.
How bad are you trailing?
Just 2 points.
Okay. So it all comes down to week 18.
Yeah, so I did not put Harrison Butker in for me last week, and he had 20-something points. So that's
killer.
I'm down 7 points to Justin W., who went 12-2.
Okay.
But he won't have McCaffrey next week.
I won last year, right?
I won last week.
No, last year.
I mean last year.
You won our league?
Yeah. You can check the history of the league and everything.
I know. Did I win? Did I have the best record in the regular season? Or did I just have the number one pick and people were mad about that?
Yeah, you might have had the best. I don't know. I know I won though.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't do too well in fantasy league championships this year. I didn't make it to any. And here's a funny story. So you know how last year I had to do stand-up comedy?
Yeah.
So
are you last in that league again?
So in the regular season I had the worst record. And then we had a consolation bracket. And last week was the last week. And I was going against another, guy at the bottom. And I managed to hang on. And I did not have to settle for the last place punishment. Which was dinner with a blow-up doll.
Oh, thank goodness. All right, we'll see y'all tomorrow on the Hoffman Show.